I never thought Christmas would be the day my mother would disown me in front of our entire family. But that's exactly what happened last year, and it changed everything between us forever. For as long as I can remember, my relationship with my mother had been complicated. I was the middle child, sandwiched between my older brother Michael, who could do no wrong, and my younger sister Emma, who was clearly the favorite. Growing up in our family home in Connecticut, I always felt like the odd one out. Michael was the successful businessman who followed in our father's footsteps, and Emma was the perfect daughter who always agreed with everything our mother said. I took a different path. After college, I moved across the country to California to pursue my dream of starting my own business. While my siblings stayed close to home and attended every family function, I built a life for myself on the opposite coast. My interior design firm took off, and I found success in my own way. But to my mother, success only counted if it happened under her watchful eye. "When are you coming back home for good?" she would ask during our monthly phone calls, her voice tinged with disappointment. "Your brother and sister are here. Family should stay together." I would always respond the same way. "Mom, I am home. I've built a life here." That answer was never good enough for her. Over the years, I missed several family gatherings because of work commitments or because flights were too expensive. With each absence, my mother's disapproval grew stronger. Last December, I decided it was finally time to make the trip back for Christmas. It had been 3 years since I'd been home for the holidays, and I missed seeing everyone together. Business was going well, and I had finally reached a point where I could take 2 weeks off to spend with my family. I was excited to show them how far I'd come, to prove that my choice to leave hadn't been a mistake. I called my mother in November to tell her the good news. "I'm coming home for Christmas this year," I said, unable to hide the excitement in my voice. There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Oh, that's nice, dear," she finally replied, her voice oddly flat. "Everyone will be here as usual." Something in her tone made me uneasy, but I brushed it off. Maybe she was just surprised. After all, it had been years since I'd been home for the holidays. "I can't wait to see the house all decorated," I continued, trying to keep the conversation positive. "Does Dad still put up those ridiculous inflatable snowmen in the front yard?" "Your father passed away last year, Olivia," she said sharply. "If you had bothered to come to the funeral, you would know that." Her words hit me like a physical blow. "What? Dad died? Why didn't anyone tell me?" "We tried calling you multiple times. You never picked up. Eventually, Michael left you a voicemail. We assumed you were too busy to care." I frantically searched my memory, trying to recall any missed calls or voicemails about my father. There had been a week last year when my phone had fallen into the ocean during a client meeting at a beach house. I had lost all my contacts and messages. Could it have happened then? "Mom, I never got any messages about Dad. I would have come home immediately if I had known. You have to believe me. It doesn't matter now," she said, her voice cold. "It's been over a year. I felt sick to my stomach. My father was gone, and my family thought I had deliberately ignored his passing. How could they think so little of me? I'm so sorry, Mom. I had no idea." Tears streamed down my face. "But that's exactly why I need to come home now. We need to talk about this in person." "Fine," she said after a long pause. "Your room is still available." When I hung up the phone, I sat in my apartment for hours, staring at the wall. My father was dead, and I hadn't been there to say goodbye. The thought was unbearable, but even worse was the realization that my family believed I had chosen not to come. How could they think I was that heartless? In the following weeks, I threw myself into preparing for the trip. I bought thoughtful gifts for everyone, including special ones for my nieces and nephews whom I barely knew. I found old family photos and had them professionally restored and framed. I even made arrangements to stay for 3 weeks instead of 2, hoping the extra time would help heal the wounds between us. The flight from Los Angeles to Hartford was long and anxious. I hadn't set foot in my childhood home in years, and now I was returning under the darkest of circumstances. As the plane descended through the clouds, I could see the snow-covered landscape below. Connecticut in December was a postcard of winter beauty, so different from the perpetual sunshine of California. I rented a car at the airport and drove slowly through the familiar streets of my hometown. Everything looked smaller than I remembered, but largely unchanged. The same shops lined Main Street, now decorated with twinkling Christmas lights and wreaths. I passed my old high school, the park where I had my first kiss, and finally turned onto Maple Drive, the street where I grew up. Our house stood at the end of the cul-de-sac, a large colonial with black shutters and a red door. My father had always been proud of that house. He had worked countless overtime hours at his accounting firm to afford it, wanting his children to grow up in a nice neighborhood with good schools. The thought that he was no longer there made my chest tighten with grief. I parked in the driveway behind several other cars. It looked like some family members had already arrived. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed my suitcase and the bag of gifts from the trunk and walked up to the front door. My hand hovered over the doorbell for a moment before I found the courage to press it. The door swung open, and there stood my younger sister Emma, looking exactly as I remembered her, perfectly put together, not a hair out of place. Her eyes widened in surprise. "You actually came," she said, making no move to hug me or welcome me inside. "I said I would," I replied, forcing a smile. "Merry Christmas, Emma." She stepped aside to let me in, and I entered the warm house that smelled of cinnamon and pine, exactly as it had every Christmas of my childhood. The familiar scent brought tears to my eyes. "Everyone's in the living room," Emma said, walking ahead of me without offering to help with my bags. I followed her, my heart pounding. The living room was full of people, some I recognized immediately, and others, children mostly, whom I had never met. My brother Michael sat on the couch with his wife and their 3 kids. Aunts, uncles, and cousins were scattered around the room, all engaged in conversation. And there, in my father's old armchair, sat my mother. The room fell silent as I entered. All eyes turned to me, expressions ranging from surprise to curiosity to outright hostility. My mother's face remained impassive, unreadable. "Hi, everyone," I said, my voice smaller than I intended. "Merry Christmas." No one responded. The silence stretched uncomfortably until my mother finally spoke. "Olivia," she said, her voice cutting through the quiet room. "What a surprise." "I told you I was coming, Mom," I replied, still standing awkwardly in the doorway with my bags. She raised an eyebrow. "Yes, well, we've heard that before." I swallowed hard, fighting back tears. This wasn't the reunion I had imagined. "I'm sorry I missed Dad's funeral. I never got the messages." "My phone, let's not discuss this now," my mother interrupted, gesturing vaguely around the room. "We have guests." I nodded, understanding that this wasn't the time or place. But when would it be? When would I get the chance to explain myself and grieve with my family? Michael stood up and approached me, giving me a stiff, formal hug. "It's been a while," he said, his tone neutral. He turned to his children. "Kids, this is your Aunt Olivia from California." The children stared at me with undisguised curiosity. The oldest, a boy of about 10, spoke up. "Mom said you don't like us, that's why you never visit." Michael's wife had the decency to look embarrassed. "Tyler, that's not what I said." But the damage was done. In that moment, I realized just how badly my absence had been misinterpreted, or perhaps deliberately mischaracterized. I had been cast as the villain in this family story, the selfish daughter who abandoned her family for a glamorous life in California. "That's not true at all," I said, kneeling down to be at eye level with the children. "I've been very busy with work, but I've missed all of you very much. That's why I brought presents." I reached into my bag and pulled out the carefully wrapped gifts. The children's eyes lit up, their skepticism momentarily forgotten in the face of potential treasures. My mother cleared her throat. "You can put those under the tree with the others. We don't open presents until Christmas morning, as always." I nodded and placed the gifts under the beautifully decorated tree in the corner. My father's absence was palpable in the room. He had always been the mediator in our family, the peacekeeper who could diffuse tension with a well-timed joke. Without him, the atmosphere felt brittle and cold. "Where should I put my bags?" I asked, looking around the room. "We put you in the guest room," my mother replied. "Emma's friend Charlotte is staying in your old room." I tried not to show my hurt. My old room had been given to a friend, while I, her daughter, was relegated to the guest room. The message was clear. I was now considered a guest in this house, not family. Emma showed me to the guest room in the basement, the coldest, most isolated part of the house. As I unpacked my suitcase, I wondered if coming home had been a mistake. Maybe too much time had passed, too many misunderstandings had piled up. Maybe there was no way to bridge the gap that had formed between me and my family. But I was determined to try. Over the next few days, I made every effort to reconnect with everyone. I offered to help with cooking and decorating. I asked my nieces and nephews about school and their hobbies. I tried to engage my brother and sister in conversations about our childhood memories. My efforts were met with polite resistance. They included me in activities, but kept me at arm's length emotionally. No one mentioned my father or his funeral directly, but the accusation hung in the air between us. "You weren't here when we needed you." On Christmas Eve, things came to a head. The entire extended family had gathered for the traditional dinner. The dining room table had been extended to its full length and covered with my mother's best tablecloth and china. Everyone was dressed up, the adults in festive sweaters and the children in their holiday best. I had spent the day helping in the kitchen, chopping vegetables and stirring sauces under my mother's critical eye. Nothing I did seemed to meet her standards. "The carrots need to be cut more evenly, Olivia," she said, inspecting my work. "Your sister would have done it properly." I bit my tongue and redid the carrots, determined not to let her provoke me into an argument. This wasn't about vegetables. It was about years of perceived rejection and abandonment. As we all sat down for dinner, I found myself placed at the far end of the table, next to my 7-year-old nephew, and across from a distant cousin I barely knew. My mother, Michael, and Emma sat together at the other end, the place of honor. The physical distance mirrored the emotional one. My mother stood to say grace, something she had taken over from my father. She thanked God for bringing the family together and asked for blessings on each person present. When she came to me in her list, she hesitated for a fraction of a second, just long enough for everyone to notice. "And Lord, we thank you for Olivia's visit," she said, the pause making it clear that my presence was temporary, unwelcome, or both. The meal progressed with forced cheerfulness. My mother held court at her end of the table, sharing stories about local community members and church events. Michael talked about his recent promotion. Emma announced that she and her boyfriend were looking at houses in the neighborhood. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," my mother beamed. "Nothing would make me happier than having both of you settled nearby." The implication was obvious. Unlike me, my siblings had made the right choice by staying close to home. I picked at my food, feeling increasingly isolated. When there was a lull in the conversation, I decided to make an effort to share something of my life. "The business is doing really well," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I just finished designing the interior for a new boutique hotel in Santa Monica. The owner was so pleased he's referred me to 2 of his friends who own restaurants." My announcement was met with uncomfortable silence. My mother took a sip of her wine. "That's nice, dear," she finally said, her tone dismissive, "though I never understood why you couldn't have done that kind of work here. There are plenty of buildings that need decorating in Connecticut." "It's more than decorating, Mom," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I run a full-service interior design firm. We handle everything from space planning to custom furniture design to—" "Michael's firm just landed the Westridge development account," my mother interrupted, turning to my brother. "Tell everyone about that, Michael." And just like that, the conversation moved on, my accomplishments brushed aside like unimportant details. I felt my face flush with humiliation and anger. I had traveled thousands of miles to reconnect with my family, but they seemed determined to keep me in the role of outsider. After dinner, everyone gathered in the living room for coffee and dessert. The children were getting excited about Santa's impending visit, their energy filling the room with a buzz that helped mask the tension among the adults. I was helping to clear the table when I overheard my mother talking to my aunt in the kitchen. "It's just for a few days," she was saying in a low voice. "She'll go back to her life in California and things will return to normal." "But she's your daughter, Margaret," my aunt replied. "Don't you think it's time to let go of the past?" "You don't understand," my mother hissed. "She didn't even come to her own father's funeral. What kind of daughter does that? And now she shows up expecting everything to be fine, as if she hasn't broken my heart 1,000 times over." "Ooh, did you ever ask her why she missed it?" my aunt pressed. "Maybe there's an explanation." "What explanation could possibly be good enough?" My mother's voice was bitter. "She chose her fancy career over her family, over her dying father." I stood frozen in the dining room, the plates still in my hands as their words washed over me. My mother truly believed I had deliberately skipped my father's funeral. She thought I valued my career more than my family. The injustice of it burned in my chest. I set the plates down with a clatter that made both women turn to look at me. Their faces showed they knew I had heard everything. "I didn't know Dad was sick," I said, my voice shaking. "I didn't know he died. No one reached me. My phone fell in the ocean last year, and I lost all my contacts and messages. I would have come home immediately if I had known. How could you think I wouldn't?" My mother's face hardened. "Convenient excuse." "It's the truth," I cried, louder than I intended. "Why would I lie about something like this? Why would I deliberately miss my own father's funeral?" "Because you've always put yourself first," she replied coldly. "Always." The unfairness of her accusation hit me like a physical blow. That's not true. I built a career because that's what Dad always encouraged me to do. He was proud of me for following my dreams. "Don't you dare speak for him," my mother snapped. "You weren't here. You didn't see how hurt he was every time you missed a holiday, every time you were too busy to call." I felt tears stinging my eyes. I called as often as I could. I sent cards and gifts. I tried to stay connected. "It wasn't enough," she said dismissively. "Now, I'd appreciate it if you would keep your voice down. We have guests." She turned her back on me and carried a tray of desserts into the living room, the conversation clearly over in her mind. My aunt gave me a sympathetic look before following her. I stood alone in the dining room, trying to regain my composure. Through the doorway, I could see everyone in the living room, laughing, talking, sharing stories. My family carrying on as if I didn't exist, as if my pain didn't matter. In that moment, I realized that nothing I could say would change my mother's mind. She had decided on her version of events, and no explanation from me would be sufficient. The gap between us felt unbridgeable. I quietly slipped upstairs to the bathroom to splash cold water on my face and collect my thoughts. As I passed my father's study, a room that had always been off limits to the children when I was growing up, I noticed the door was ajar. Without thinking, I pushed it open and stepped inside. The room was exactly as I remembered it. The heavy oak desk, the walls lined with books, the leather chair where my father would sit and read the newspaper every Sunday morning. But now there were boxes stacked in the corners, and the bookshelves were half empty. They were clearing out his things. On the desk was a folder marked Will and Testament. My hand hovered over it uncertainly. I shouldn't look, I knew that. But something compelled me to open it. Perhaps I needed some connection to my father, some evidence that I had mattered to him, even if my mother wanted to erase me from the family narrative. Inside was a copy of my father's will, along with various legal documents. My eyes scanned the pages, not fully comprehending the legal terminology until I reached a section that made my heart stop. To my daughter, Olivia, I leave the family home at 47 Maple Drive, with the understanding that she will allow her mother to reside there for the duration of her natural life. I read the paragraph several times, unable to believe what I was seeing. My father had left me the house. Not Michael, not Emma, but me, the daughter who had moved across the country, the one my mother claimed had abandoned the family. There was a letter clipped to the will, addressed to me in my father's familiar handwriting. With trembling fingers, I unfolded it. My dearest Olivia, if you're reading this, then I am gone, and for that I am deeply sorry. There is so much I wanted to tell you, so many conversations we should have had. I want you to know that I have always been proud of you for having the courage to follow your own path, even when it was difficult. Your mother and I came from a generation where staying close to home was expected, particularly for daughters. Your decision to move away has been hard for your mother to accept, but I understood it. You have your own dreams, your own life to live. I am leaving you the house because I know you will do the right thing. Your mother needs a home, and Michael and Emma are already settled. But more than that, this house represents our family, all of us, including you. By giving it to you, I hope to create a bridge that might one day bring you back, not to stay perhaps, but to reconnect. Please don't be angry with your mother or your siblings. Grief makes people say and do things they don't mean. They love you, as I have always loved you. Forever your proud father, Dad. Tears streamed down my face as I read his words. He had understood me in a way my mother never had. He hadn't seen my move to California as abandonment, but as courage. And in his final act, he had tried to create a connection between me and the family I had left behind. I carefully folded the letter and put it in my pocket, then replaced the will in its folder. As I turned to leave the study, I found my mother standing in the doorway, her face a mask of fury. "What are you doing in here?" she demanded. "This room is private." I straightened my shoulders, suddenly feeling stronger. I was looking for some connection to Dad. I miss him too, Mom. "You have no right," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "No right to miss him, no right to grieve. You weren't here." The injustice of her words made something snap inside me. Years of trying to please her, of apologizing for living my own life, of accepting her cold judgment, it all boiled over. "I didn't know he was dying," I shouted. "I didn't know. How many times do I have to say it? And you know what? Dad understood why I left. He supported my decision. He was proud of me. He was disappointed in you," she countered, but I could see uncertainty flicker across her face. "No, he wasn't. He left me a letter, and he left me the house." The color drained from my mother's face. "What?" "He left me the house," I repeated, my voice steady now, "with the provision that you can live in it for the rest of your life. Did you know that? Or did you and Michael and Emma decide to keep that information from me, just like you kept Dad's illness from me?" Before she could respond, Emma appeared in the hallway behind her. "What's going on? Everyone can hear you downstairs." "Your sister has been snooping through your father's private papers," my mother said, her voice shaking. "And now she's making ridiculous claims." "It's not ridiculous, it's the truth," I said, looking directly at Emma. "Dad left the house to me. It's in his will." Emma's eyes widened. "That's impossible. We all agreed." She stopped abruptly, realizing what she had just revealed. "You all agreed what?" I asked, my suspicion growing. "That you wouldn't tell me about the will. Just like you all agreed not to make sure I knew about Dad's funeral." The pieces were falling into place. It wasn't just a case of missed messages or miscommunication. They had deliberately kept me in the dark, about our father's illness, about his death, and now about his will. We tried to call you, Emma insisted, but her eyes wouldn't meet mine. Did you? Did you really? I challenged. Or did you leave one voicemail and decide that was enough effort? Did any of you try my work number, send an email, contact me through social media? There are a dozen ways you could have reached me if you had actually wanted to. Neither of them answered, their silence confirming my suspicions. You didn't want me at the funeral, I said, the realization hitting me with full force. You didn't want me to know about the will. You were hoping I would never find out, that you could just divide everything among yourselves. That's not true, Emma protested weakly. Then what is the truth, Emma? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my own family conspired to cut me out completely. My mother stepped forward, her face hard. You cut yourself out when you moved across the country and built a life without us. Your father was too soft-hearted to see it, but I knew who you really were. Selfish, ungrateful. That's enough, I interrupted, my voice surprisingly calm given the storm of emotions inside me. I'm done apologizing for living my life on my own terms. I'm done trying to earn your approval. I came here hoping we could heal our relationship, but clearly that's not possible right now. I walked past them and headed for the stairs. My mother's voice called after me. Where do you think you're going? I'm going to pack my things, I replied without turning around. I'll be staying at a hotel tonight. You can't leave on Christmas Eve, Emma said, following me. What about the children? They're expecting their aunt to be here in the morning. I stopped and looked at her. Their aunt, who doesn't care about her family. Their aunt who's so selfish she skipped her own father's funeral. Is that really who they're expecting to see? Emma had the decency to look ashamed. I'll come back tomorrow morning for a few hours, I conceded, thinking of the children's innocent faces. They shouldn't have to pay for the adults' mistakes, but after that, I'm going back to California. I continued down the stairs, aware that conversations had stopped and all eyes were on me as I entered the living room. My brother Michael stood up, concern on his face. What's going on? He asked, looking from me to our mother and Emma, who had followed me down. Ask them, I said, heading for the guest room to pack. I'm sure they'll give you their version of events. As I threw my clothes into my suitcase, I could hear raised voices upstairs. The perfect family Christmas was unraveling, and I was being cast as the villain once again. I zipped up my suitcase and took a deep breath. I hadn't come here looking for a fight. I hadn't come here to claim the house or to disrupt their lives. I had simply wanted to reconnect, to grieve my father, to be part of the family again. But they had made it clear that there was no place for me here, not unless I conformed to their expectations and accepted their version of events. When I emerged from the guest room with my suitcase, the living room fell silent again. My mother stood in the center of the room, her face flushed with anger. "You're really leaving? On Christmas Eve?" she asked, her voice carrying a note of disbelief despite her earlier dismissal of me. "Yes," I replied simply. "I'll come back in the morning for the children's sake, but I think it's best if I stay elsewhere tonight." My mother's eyes narrowed. "If you walk out that door now, don't bother coming back. Not tomorrow, not ever. You're not welcome in this house." The room collectively gasped at her harsh words. My aunt started to protest, but my mother silenced her with a look. I felt all eyes on me, waiting for my response. In that moment, I realized that this was the pattern we had been locked in for years. My mother issuing ultimatums, and me either giving in or running away. But I was done with that dynamic. I was an adult, successful in my own right, and I deserved to be treated with respect. This house, I said clearly, was left to me by Dad. So actually, Mom, it's not up to you who is welcome here. A stunned silence followed my words. I could see the shock on everyone's faces. Apparently, my mother had kept the truth about the will from the entire family, not just me. "What is she talking about, Margaret?" my uncle asked, looking confused. My mother's face had gone pale. "She's lying," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "The will is in Dad's study," I said, addressing the room. "Anyone who wants to can go read it for themselves. Dad left the house to me, with the provision that Mom can live here for the rest of her life. I have no intention of changing that arrangement. All I wanted was to be included in this family again, to grieve Dad together, to rebuild our relationships. But I can see now that's not possible." I picked up my suitcase and headed for the door. No one moved to stop me. As I reached for the doorknob, my mother's voice rang out one last time. "You're not welcome here, Olivia. Not now, not ever." I turned to face her, taking in the sight of my family gathered behind her, some looking confused, others uncomfortable, a few even sympathetic, but none of them spoke up in my defense. "Merry Christmas to you too, Mom," I said quietly, and walked out into the snowy night. The snow crunched beneath my feet as I walked down the driveway, dragging my suitcase behind me. Tears stung my eyes in the bitter cold, but I refused to let them fall. I wouldn't give my mother the satisfaction of seeing me break down, even if she couldn't see me from the house. I had barely reached the end of the driveway when I heard footsteps hurrying after me. I turned to see my Aunt Patricia rushing toward me, her coat hastily thrown over her shoulders. "Olivia, wait," she called. "You can't just leave like this. It's Christmas Eve and there's a snowstorm coming." I stopped, wiping my eyes quickly. "I don't have a choice, Aunt Patty. You heard, Mom? I'm not welcome." She reached me and put a hand on my arm. "Come stay with me and Uncle Robert. Our guest room is always ready." Her kindness nearly broke me. After days of coldness from my immediate family, this simple gesture of warmth felt overwhelming. "Thank you," I managed to say, "but I've already booked a hotel. I think I need some space to think." Aunt Patty nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Will you really come back tomorrow? For the kids?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to drive straight to the airport and catch the first flight back to California to put this whole painful reunion behind me. But I had made a promise, and the children shouldn't suffer for the adults' mistakes. "I'll be here at 9, I promised. "Just for the morning." "Good." She squeezed my arm. "And for what it's worth, I believe you about not knowing about your father. Your mother, she hasn't been herself since he died. Grief does strange things to people." "This isn't just grief," I replied, thinking of the hidden will and the deliberate attempts to keep me away. "This is something else." "Perhaps," Aunt Patty conceded. "But don't make any permanent decisions tonight. Sleep on it. Things might look different in the morning." I doubted that, but I nodded to please her. "I should go before the roads get worse." She hugged me tightly. "Your father would be heartbroken to see his family like this. Remember that." As I drove to the Marriott on the outskirts of town, her words echoed in my mind. Dad would indeed be devastated by what had happened tonight. His letter had been full of hope that the house might bring us together, not drive us further apart. The hotel was quiet, most people already home with their families for Christmas. The receptionist looked sympathetic as she checked me in on Christmas Eve, probably assuming I was a stranded traveler rather than someone who had been thrown out of their family home. My room was impersonal but comfortable, with a view of the snow-covered parking lot. I sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly feeling the full weight of the evening crashing down on me. My family had not only excluded me from my father's final days and funeral, but had actively tried to hide his will from me. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. I pulled my father's letter from my pocket and read it again, tracing his handwriting with my fingertip. "Please don't be angry with your mother or your siblings," he had written. But how could I not be? They had robbed me of the chance to say goodbye to him, to be there when he needed me most. I reached for my phone and called the one person who would understand, my best friend and business partner, Sophia. "Merry Christmas Eve," she answered cheerfully. "How's the family reunion going?" "It's a disaster," I replied, my voice breaking. "I'm at a hotel. Mom threw me out." "What? Why? What happened? The words poured out of me. My father's death that I hadn't known about, the accusations, the hidden will, my mother's final declaration that I wasn't welcome. By the time I finished, I was sobbing. "Oh, Liv," Sophia said, her voice full of concern. "I'm so sorry. That's beyond awful." "I don't know what to do," I admitted. "Part of me wants to just come home and forget I ever tried to reconnect. But then there's the house that your father left to you," Sophia said thoughtfully. "That's huge, Liv. He wanted you to have it." "With Mom living in it," I reminded her. "I'm not going to kick her out." "Of course not. But this changes things, doesn't it? This is your father reaching out to you, making sure you stay connected to your roots." She was right. Dad had known exactly what he was doing when he left me the house. It wasn't just about property, it was about belonging, about ensuring I would always have a place in the family, whether my mother liked it or not. "I need to talk to a lawyer," I said, suddenly decisive. "Not to change anything for Mom, but to understand my rights and responsibilities, and to make sure they can't keep hiding things from me." "Good call," Sophia agreed. "And for what it's worth, I think you should go back tomorrow just like you planned. Hold your head high. Show those kids that their aunt does care, no matter what they've been told." After we hung up, I did some research on my phone and found a local law firm that specialized in estate law. I sent an email requesting an appointment as soon as possible, explaining the basic situation. It was Christmas Eve, so I didn't expect a response until after the holidays, but it felt good to take action. I barely slept that night, my mind racing with memories of my childhood, my father, and the family I had thought I was coming home to. When morning came, I showered and dressed carefully, choosing a festive red sweater and dark jeans. I wanted to look put together, not defeated, when I returned to the house. The roads were mostly clear as I drove back to Maple Drive. The snowstorm had been less severe than predicted, leaving just a fresh dusting over the previous accumulation. As I turned onto my childhood street, I felt a knot forming in my stomach. I didn't know what reception awaited me, but I was determined to keep my promise to the children. Several cars were still parked in the driveway and along the street. It seemed most of the extended family had stayed overnight, as was tradition. I parked behind my cousin's minivan and took a deep breath before getting out. I hadn't brought any luggage this time, just the gifts I had originally placed under the tree. I knocked on the front door instead of using my key, unsure of whether I still had the right to walk in unannounced. My brother Michael opened it, looking surprised to see me. "You came back," he said, his tone neutral. "I said I would," I replied. "For the kids." He nodded and stepped aside to let me in. The house was alive with the sounds of Christmas morning, children's excited voices, Christmas music playing softly, the smell of coffee and cinnamon rolls in the air. It was painfully familiar, a scene from countless Christmas mornings of my childhood. The living room was already chaotic, with torn wrapping paper littering the floor and children playing with their new toys. Everyone looked up when I entered, conversations faltering. My mother sat in her usual chair, her face hardening when she saw me. "Aunt Olivia?" My nephew Tyler spotted me first, running over with a new action figure in his hand. "Look what Santa brought me!" I knelt down to admire his toy, grateful for the simple, uncomplicated welcome of a child. "That's awesome, Tyler. Is Santa good to you this year?" He nodded enthusiastically. "There's still presents for you under the tree. We didn't open them because Mom said we had to wait for you." I looked up in surprise to see my sister-in-law offering me a small smile. Perhaps not everyone in the family was against me after all. "Thank you for coming back," she said quietly, handing me a mug of coffee. "The kids were asking about you this morning." I took the coffee gratefully. "I wouldn't disappoint them." She glanced toward my mother, who was deliberately ignoring my presence, then back at me. "Michael told me about the will. I had no idea. None of us did except your mother." So it was true. My mother had kept the truth from everyone, not just me. The knowledge didn't bring me any satisfaction, only sadness at how far she had gone to maintain control. "It doesn't change anything for now," I assured her. "I'm not here to make trouble." The next hour was surprisingly pleasant as I sat on the floor with the children, helping them with their toys and watching them open the gifts I had brought. Art supplies for the older ones, stuffed animals for the youngest. Their parents hovered nearby, initially wary but gradually relaxing as they saw that I wasn't going to cause a scene. My mother remained in her chair, accepting gifts and thanking people mechanically, but never once acknowledging me directly. Emma stayed close to her, shooting me occasional uncertain glances. The rest of the extended family did their best to maintain the festive atmosphere, though I could tell from their forced cheerfulness that everyone was walking on eggshells. As the morning wore on, my Uncle Robert, Aunt Patty's husband and my father's brother, came to sit beside me on the couch. "Your dad would be glad you're here," he said quietly. "He always hated how things were between you and your mother." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "Did you know he tried to call you himself when he first got sick?" Uncle Robert continued. "He asked me to help him with his cell phone. His hands were shaky from the medication. He wanted to tell you himself, not if you hear it from Margaret or the kids. This was news to me." "What happened?" Uncle Robert sighed. "He said it went to voicemail. He left a message asking you to call him back, said it was important. When you didn't call, Margaret convinced him you were too busy with your new life to care." Another missed connection, another deliberate misinterpretation. "My phone was lost," I explained. "I never got any messages from that time." "I figured it might be something like that," he said, patting my hand. "You were always your father's daughter, stubborn, independent, but never cruel. He understood why you needed to leave, even if your mother couldn't." His words were a balm to my wounded heart. "Thank you for telling me. He was proud of you, Olivia, never doubt that." As the morning progressed, I found myself actually enjoying moments of the celebration, despite the tension with my mother. The children's excitement was infectious, and several family members made quiet overtures of support, or at least neutrality. It wasn't the warm family reunion I had hoped for, but it wasn't the complete rejection of the night before either. Around noon, as people began preparing for Christmas dinner, I decided it was time to leave. I had kept my promise to be there for the children, but I couldn't face another meal under my mother's cold stare. I was saying goodbye to Tyler when my mother approached, her face rigid with tension. "I see you couldn't stay away," she said quietly. "I came for them," I replied, nodding toward the children. "I'm leaving now." "Good." She glanced around before continuing. "I've spoken to our family lawyer this morning. Whatever claims you think you have to this house—" "I don't have claims, Mom," I interrupted. "I have the legal deed according to Dad's will, but I have no intention of changing your living situation." Her eyes narrowed. "Then what do you want? Money?" The question was so offensive I almost laughed. "I don't want anything from you. I wanted to reconnect with my family. I wanted to grieve Dad with the people who loved him. You gave up that right when you moved across the country." I shook my head, suddenly tired of this circular argument. "No, Mom. Moving away to build my own life didn't mean I stopped being part of this family. That was your choice, not mine." For a moment I thought I saw something flicker in her eyes, doubt perhaps, or even regret, but it vanished quickly. "I'll be in touch through my lawyer," I said, picking up my purse. "Merry Christmas, Mom." As I headed for the door, Emma caught up with me. "Olivia, wait. I need to tell you something." She led me to the front porch, away from listening ears. The winter air was crisp, our breath forming clouds between us. "Dad made me promise something before he died," Emma began, her voice unsteady. "He made me promise to make sure you knew how much he loved you." My throat tightened. "And did you try to tell me?" She looked away, guilt written across her face. I sent one email. When you didn't respond, I told myself I had fulfilled my promise, but the truth is, I could have tried harder. Why, Emma? Why didn't you want me here? It wasn't that we didn't want you here, she said, though her eyes told a different story. It was just easier with you gone. Mum was already falling apart, and if you had come back for the funeral, you might have found out about the will sooner. I nodded, pieces falling into place. My mother's actions hadn't been just about grief. They had been about control. Control over the narrative, over the family, over my father's legacy. I'm sorry, Emma said, sounding sincere for the first time. Dad would have been so disappointed in how we've handled this. Yes, he would, I agreed. What are you going to do about the house? Nothing for now, I assured her. Mum can stay there as long as she wants. That's what Dad intended. And after? She pressed. After Mom? I don't know yet, Emma. That's a long way off, hopefully. Will you come back? For visits, I mean? It was a loaded question. Would I return to a place where I'd been publicly rejected? I don't know that either, I answered honestly. But I'm not going to disappear again. Whatever happens with Mom, you and I are still family. As I drove away from Maple Drive, I felt a strange mix of sadness and liberation. I knew now that my father had loved me, that he had wanted to maintain our connection even after his death. Back at the hotel, I found an email from a law firm I had contacted. Despite the holiday, they offered to meet me the next day. I was grateful for the momentum. The sooner I understood my legal position, the sooner I could move forward. The next day, I met with Lauren Chen, a sharp young attorney who specialized in estate law. She reviewed the copy of the will I had photographed. Based on what you've told me, the will is clear, she said. Your father left you the house with a life estate for your mother. That means she has the right to live there for the rest of her life, but the property legally belongs to you. What do I need to do now to make it official? The will should have been filed with the probate court after your father's death, Lauren explained. I'll check those records. If everything was done properly, there should be a deed transferring the property to you, subject to your mother's life estate. A week after Christmas, Lauren called with news. The will was properly filed. Your mother was named as executor. However, the deed transferring the house to you was prepared but never filed with the county recorder's office. A chill ran down my spine. Could she have been planning to sell it or transfer it to someone else? Possibly, Lauren admitted, but that would violate her duties as executor. The good news is we can fix this. I've prepared the paperwork to have the deed properly recorded. By early January, everything was official. The deed had been recorded, showing me as the owner of 47 Maple Drive, with my mother holding a life estate. I hadn't spoken directly to my mother throughout this process. All communication had been through lawyers, but now that the legal matters were settled, I needed to see her once more before returning to California. I drove to the house on a cold January morning. The Christmas decorations were gone, the house stark in the winter light. My mother opened the door before I could knock, as if she had been watching for me. She looked older than she had just 2 weeks ago, the lines in her face deeper. I know why you're here, she said, stepping back. Your lawyer explained everything to mine. Her tone was bitter, but I detected something else beneath it. Resignation, perhaps. I'm not here to argue, Mom, I said, following her into the living room. Nothing is going to change. You can live here exactly as you always have. She sat in her chair, positioned perfectly to catch the afternoon sun. Your father thought he was being clever, she said after a moment, leaving the house to you, knowing I couldn't throw him out. Now you have the same power over me. It's not about power, Mom. Dad wanted us to stay connected, that's all. She looked at me directly. And will we? Stay connected? It was a loaded question. containing years of tension and misunderstanding? I don't know, I answered honestly. That depends on both of us, doesn't it? She nodded slightly. I'm going back to California tomorrow, I said. If you need anything regarding the house, you can contact me directly or through the lawyers. Always so practical, she murmured. Just like your father. I took that as the closest thing to a peace offering I was likely to get. Goodbye, Mom. As I reached the door, she called after me. Olivia. I turned, waiting. He did love you, she said, her voice barely audible. No matter what I said. I know, I replied. He loved all of us. I walked out into the January sunshine, feeling both heavy and light. The visit hadn't brought reconciliation, but it had brought resolution. I had claimed my place in the family, not by forcing my way in, but by accepting the role my father had wanted me to have, keeper of the home, guardian of our shared history. As I drove away, I caught a glimpse of my mother watching me from the window. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was running away. This time, I was simply going home, to the life I had built, to the person I had become, and somehow I knew my father would have understood.